Guess who's back? Back again. For La B.
Go tell a friend, huh?
Alright, so as established for you about 10 seconds ago, but for me it was about 3 months ago, The Magician's Apprentice is up for contention to be the worst Dalek story ever created, with some steep competition. But whether this series opener as a whole will go down as the worst Dalek story ever really fully depends on how this part of the story plays out. And I'm just gonna be straight up, I have literally zero hope for this part of the story being anything but worse than the first. Because the first part of this story left so many questions unanswered, like the status of so many characters even being alive, the return of Skaro, and other general nonsense, such as why the 12th Doctor has suddenly taken such a massive downgrade in everything about him, even down to his drip. But one of the biggest nagging issues that I constantly brought up in the first half was specifically Missy's survival from the end of the Series 8 finale, and now on top of that, how she survived the end of the last part as well. So, let's just jump straight into it, because I know this is going to be a really fun way to start for you lot. For me, on the other hand, I think I'm about to start my fucking Joker incel arc, because of how much this shit makes me hate everything and everyone. So this episode begins on a nausea-inducing shot, which, in and of itself, doesn't even make any sense, because why in the name of all that's holy would Clara be swinging around this quickly? Especially considering how far away Missy is from her. Like, what? Did she just spin her around and then run and go and sit back down to try and look cool? Honestly, given how poorly written Missy has been in this story so far, and given how poorly written she becomes in the future, I wouldn't put this past her. So Missy starts waffling on about a story in which the Doctor is cornered and escaping a threat. No specification on which face he had at the time so they could force in a cheap cameo from the 1st and 4th Doctor. Remember in the last part of the story when I said it had been such a long time since references to the past were used for anything else but key jangling bullshit? Well, there's strike two. At least fucking space them out. These two both literally happened within the same story, man. In Missy's said story, the Doctor is cornered with a teleporter that ran out of batteries and is about to die. And the question is, how does he escape? And this moment is what single-handedly destroys not only the Series 8 finale, not only this part of the story, not only the previous part of the story, not only every single Dalek story ever written, but this one conceivable piece of information destroys hundreds of Doctor Who stories, to the point where it makes you question every single story you'd ever seen before and every single story you'd ever see after this. Well, if you continued watching after this horrendous hogshit of a story, because if you stop watching the show after this, I wouldn't entirely blame you, because on every single conceivable, viable, possible angle you look at this from, this destroys tension and violates logic so much to the point where that it's enough to make your head explode. Let's start with one of the most obvious problems with this scene first. So, when these androids start shooting at the Doctor, Missy says he has 4 nanoseconds to live, if she's being generous. Yet, apparently in that time, he has time to scan the android's technology and copy it onto the screwdriver, and then transfer the energy from the laser fryer through the sonic screwdriver onto the teleporter and then teleport away. Ignoring how insanely implausible all of that is to do in 0.4 fucking seconds, let's keep in mind that he didn't even have the sonic screwdriver in his hand in any of these previous shots. So let's add him getting it out of his pocket onto the list of other bullshit he has to do in less than half a second. If we look in the scene itself, the way it's presented, he literally could have just dodged all these shots anyway, because they literally all go above his head after he ducks. Also add him ducking into stuff he's doing in half of a second. So ignoring all the other issues this densely packed obtuse plot hole creates, in universe, it didn't even need to exist in the fucking first place. Because the Doctor could have escaped this situation anyway. The incompetence and belligerence of everyone involved in creating this scene is so insanely off the charts that it honestly could have been written by the same moron who ruined the Daleks in the first place. Oh wait. And despite the fact there's apparently upwards of 50 of these android things, they clearly can't rapid fire lasers considering how slowly they shoot at them anyway. So if he really wanted, the Doctor probably could have still escaped this situation even if he was in the middle surrounded by them. And the most crucial part of this scene is that you can just divert energy from laser fire onto any said teleporter so you can escape. I would like to believe that the people who watch my videos are intelligent enough to understand why this in itself can straight up break the entire show, but given some of the comments I've received on videos from non-subs, I'll explain this anyway. Okay, so first of all, if this was really possible, then every single Dalek story ever written, hell, every Doctor Who story which features any laser of some description, which, trust me, is a fucking lot of them, the Doctor and companion could be in no real danger if the Doctor just got a vortex manipulator and scanned it to whatever enemy they're facing. Because the laser fire is fucking worthless. This completely destroys so much of this entire show, because why the fuck would the Doctor not just always carry around a teleporter? Because then he'll be in no real danger. Oh, let me check how often. Fucking ever! Sontarans, useless mate. Cybermen, useless mate. Silurians, useless mate. And most importantly, fucking Daleks! The most powerful killing beings ever conceived in this show's entire universe. Fucking useless mate! Every single Dalek story ever written, on top of now every Davros story ever written if you remember the previous part, has now been fully destroyed by this abominable, late aborted fucking daft crackhead of a story. So just keep in mind throughout the rest of this story, just think, Clara's not in danger, and neither is Missy, because they literally cannot die. They cannot die to any Dalek. They cannot die to the Daleks! You know, the one thing they're made for? Eliminating anything that isn't them and taking over? They actually can't do that. They are incapable of doing that. Because Moffat being Moffat decided to pull a Moffat and write himself into a corner with no real plan on how to get out of it. So he just pulls some bullshit out of his arse, which he'll most likely never bring up again. Wait, was this ever brought up again?
No.
Just because he wanted the illusion of something looking cool, while systematically destroying so much of this show, with no real thought or regard put into how this affects other stories, or even his own stories. Or even this story, for a matter of fact. This man is such an incompetent baboon. I honestly can't believe the BBC didn't fire him before he called it quits. I mean, yeah, sure, Missy says it fries them, but are we really supposed to believe that considering the lies she tells in this story, and considering she's already done this before and escaped fine? Something which is even acknowledged in this story? Yeah. I don't believe it. And imagine how much more complex it would be, or at least it should be, to program this bullshit to work on Daleks as opposed to random generic androids. Surely that would take a lot of time to do considering how powerful we've been shown these things can be. you get the picture. But wait! There's more! Do you remember when Missy actually programmed her and Clara's vortex manipulators to be able to make this happen? Oh wait, what? You don't? Well, maybe that's because it never fucking happened! And assuming Missy is smart enough to do this without a sonic screwdriver, which theoretically she could be, when do we even see Missy touch Clara's vortex manipulator?
That's it?
That's literally it. Never before and never again does Missy put her hands anywhere fucking near Clara's vortex manipulator. And forgive me for doubting she managed to do all of that shit in that stupid little scene before she even knew the Daleks were involved in this. Also, Missy doesn't even have a Sonic, and her stupid umbrella wasn't established to have any real use until the awful Series 10 finale, and she doesn't even have it here. And surely it would take way more programming to have it so the laser doesn't need an energy converter, such as a Sonic, but it just makes contact with the body, not even near where the fucking vortex manipulator is, and it would still fucking work. Oh my god! How in the ever-loving brainchild fuck has this less than 5-minute scene destroyed so much? So much of it doesn't make sense. So much of it destroys so many other stories. It makes the Doctor and so many others with this technology look fucking moronic. And even assuming vortex manipulators in universe didn't exist until the revival, let me just list every single story where they could have been, oh I don't know, pretty fucking useful. Dalek, Bad Wolf, Partner of the Ways, Army of Ghosts, you get the fucking message. And I really want to move on from this because I've been putting off writing this script for months, just knowing that I'd have to write a massive rant on how this one stupid scene destroys an entire story. Villain? Fucking show for that matter? And to put the icing on top of this already awfully made shitty cake, the Doctor doesn't even escape in the scene, because once more, the genius who wrote this garbage has to reinforce how the Doctor is so goofy and quirky and silly and funny that he wasn't even looking where he was going and he fell into a pit of vampire monkeys immediately after escaping the inescapable due to this bullshit script.
In us and him is everything the deadliest race in all of history can throw at us.
Yeah, they seem really deadly now. Thanks, Moffat! And also, can we bear in mind that all of that absolutely, utterly, unfathomable, inconceivable, witless, vacuous sludge all happened not even 5 minutes into the episode, before the title sequence had even rolled. Oh, boy!
This is the worst. I'm gonna kill myself!
Can I have a stick too? Make your own stick.
Have you honestly ever seen a performance so devoid of charisma in your life? So we cut back to the Doctor and Davros, and the Doctor is threatening Davros with a Dalek laser and telling him to get out of a chair. Which is very highly out of character, considering what this character has been through, but this is meant to be shown the Doctor's unstable nature since he's meant to be becoming the hybrid, blah blah blah, whatever. But really, just consider this for a moment. This is the equivalent of the Doctor throwing a disabled man out of a wheelchair.
Yeah, man, that's great.
Shut up, I don't care. It's a little too great.
Fucking filthy Frank left me hanging. Literally, man. Now what the fuck I'm supposed to do? Bitch ass. Fuck yeah!
But again, despite the bullshit this is supposed to link to being the eventual arc for the Doctor in this series, it doesn't work, not only because this eventual hybrid arc is never properly explained and is basically just the Doctor acting out of character for a whole series and it never being justified, this is out of character for the Doctor as a character after the Time War anyway. Even before that. Remember in Journey's End how despite everything Davros did, including leading to the deaths of countless people and basically forcing the Doctor to have to kill his friends. Even knowing all of that, the Doctor still tried to save him in the end because of what he's went through.
Davros! Come with me! I promise I can save you!
And even if you want to argue that he's changed since Gallifrey is saved now, thanks for that one, by the way, Moffat.
It wasn't so much the Time Lords disappearing, it was all the Daleks shooting themselves. It's like, couldn't any of them dodge that? No Dalek, just go, whoops, out the way.
The problem of Gallifrey itself being saved completely destroys the narrative anyway, because the Doctor is so 50-50 on whether he actually cares about what he did anymore. Like, most of the time afterwards, he's just as quick to commit these crimes. But then, also, on top of that, even in this series itself, it's shown it was still affected him for what he did. But then why would he do out of character stuff like this? Like, just make up your goddamn mind on whether this actually matters or not. Or, for a matter of fact, why don't you just go back in time and not fuck up the narrative in the fucking first place? And to make this even worse, the only reason the Doctor does this is because, once again, Moffat wanted a style over substance moment, just so he could have the cool visual of having the Doctor sat in Davros's chair. But this isn't even cool since it adds nothing real to the narrative, and he doesn't even fucking do anything while he's in it, as we'll soon come to see. And I really despise how the second the Daleks think the Doctor has gone missing, instead of just, locking all of the doors inside so he can't escape, they alert the entire planet, just to show the Daleks acting stupid and roaming around like idiots. Honestly, when they're just running and flying around aimlessly, it evokes the same level of threat as to when they would just wobble around in Classic Who. And that's to say, it's not threatening, it's not intimidating, it just looks dumb. Remember when these things were slow and methodical, but when they did speed up, it was the most terrifying thing ever? Man, I really miss when these things were in contention for being one of the single greatest fictional villains ever, and not just overused and abused to the point where I'm hoping RED doesn't even bring them back. So the Doctor makes a joke to further undermine the Daleks and they shoot him, which has no effect.
Because the real question is, where did I get the cup of tea?
Let me guess. Style over substance line, which is just eventually a plot hole?
Answer. I'm the Doctor. Just accept it.
Right, yeah, sure, okay. So Missy then throws Clara down a 20-foot hole, which is the equivalent of being thrown off more than the height of a double-decker bus.
Oh, the buff. Get off, you pesky meddling kid. Off! Off!
Or this. No! Oh my God! No! Directly onto concrete. And she's completely fine. As is what would happen to a 5'2" petite woman falling from that height, completely unprotected and unexpected. How can you even further kill the immersion and tension in the story when you know the characters can't die a laser fire, but the plot armor is also so severe that they are just immune to injury as well? Every motherfucker out here like the goddamn Undertaker.
With a claymore! Use the assault! Elaine on the top rope! Whoa! Undertaker from the top, coast to coast to the dead man! Put the Undertaker away! Tombstone pile driver!
Fucking hell, even when the Doctor survives a high height in the Satan pit, he still acts injured when he wakes up, even if it's from an undeterminable height. And he even says there's an air cushion to support the fall. So, that example just doesn't even really work. Hell, I don't really want to compare two instances of bad plot armor here, but even in The End of Time, when the Doctor miraculously survives that fall out of the ship, at least he acts injured from it and can barely move for the rest of the episode. I know there's not much to be gained from comparing two bad things, but I'm trying to show that even if you have plot armor, little bits of acting can at least make it less egregious.
God, you're dumb.
Sound Design 2015. So it's revealed that everything surrounding them is decaying Dalek because Daleks can't die. And this would usually be the point where I show a compilation of them dying, but given the fact that I've already had to do a massive compilation showing how powerful their weapons are, and in that you can see them destroying themselves, I'm pretty sure you get the picture. So I'll save you and me the effort of watching loads of clips like that again. So the Doctor continues to spit empty threats at the Daleks, and he reveals he's been at the heart of their empire for 45 minutes. And that really begs the question.
Who are you?
Because I'm pretty sure that if I know the Doctor as a character as well as I think I do, then he most certainly would have done more than sit around and do fuck all for 45 minutes if he had that much power and that much material and equipment at his disposal. Like, what? And he had all the power of Davros, you say? And you haven't achieved anything? God, some threat you are like.
I haven't even got out of my chair. Ask me what I want. Hurry the fuck up!
So the Doctor gets raveled up by a bunch of snakes, which, if you really look at them, are very obviously not there. And this reignites the issue I brought up in the first part of the story, and that's how the fuck did these snakes get here? Can the Snake Nutter actually fucking teleport these things? Which, if that's the case, which it most likely is, then that reaffirms one of my first issues with The Magician's Apprentice, and also creates huge problems for this story. Like, why the fuck didn't fucking Shath, or whatever he's called, do this as soon as he found Davros was on the floor? Could have saved the risk of him almost fucking dying for no reason. Like, if you have the power to teleport or to spawn deadly snakes at your will, take your pick, both equally create as many problems, then why wouldn't you just instinctually immediately use them to restrain a threat? Why is every character in this story such a cretinous cheese? I mean, and also, if those snakes were already there, then the Doctor's just even more of a moron than I thought he was.
Tonight, we entrapped a Time Lord.
You know, the awful twist later would be a lot more impactful had this line not been here at all, and Davros just said, be subtle. That would leave enough for the audience to maybe figure it out on their own, without it being entirely obvious what they're doing. So we cut back to Clara and Missy again to see Clara has absolutely no awareness of her surroundings.
Not this time.
I mean, you could have at least tried to stop her.
Dark Star Alloy. It's of Gallifreyan. The Doctor gave it to me when my daughter...
You know, I really fucking hate when Moffat does random lines like this just to make the audience go, oh my god, the thing I didn't know about character, which doesn't add anything but could add a lot, could change loads. Like, why even add these lines in that add so much, so casually, but just go absolutely nowhere with them ever? Like, do you honestly think anyone even remembers that the Master, a character who has existed for over 50 years, apparently has offspring, yet they were never mentioned before and will most likely never be mentioned again? It's such a key-jangling way of writing with no real substance to it. Some might say it's style over substance.
I think she was a man back then. I'm fairly sure that I was too. It was a long time ago.
So Dalek shows up to get Clara and doesn't just immediately kill her for some reason, even though she has absolutely no value to it, and it then lets Missy poke 4 holes in it without any resistance or alert. I mean, yeah, these damage levels would seem insignificant, but considering that it's a Dalek and how they react to any form of attack, or other form of life for that matter, I don't see why it doesn't also just shoot Missy. Oh, what? No real reason? Who would have thought? Well, I know someone who didn't thought. The fruitless twat who wrote this shit! So the Dalek blows up, but not really, and then we cut back to the Doctor and Davros. Again! I hope me constantly saying how we're cutting back and forth really puts into perspective how disjointed and all over the place this episode feels. The Doctor then wakes up on a chair for some reason. Don't know why there's another chair on Skaro, but whatever. And then this interaction happens.
I am dying, Doctor.
Wait for it.
You keep saying that, you keep not dying.
Can you give it some welly?
And you still haven't asked him how he survived the events of the Series 4 finale. Does that not pique your interest in the slightest? Because it sure as shit piques mine! Remember the first thing the Doctor and Davros talked about in Stolen Earth? How Davros even showed up in the first place?
I must say I'm surprised to see you. The last time we met, your ship blew up. I thought with you on board.
Not when there is an escape pod to be.
You know it's bad when I'm comparing New Who to Classic Who and Classic Who has the superior outcome? Like, Revelation isn't even good, it's also fucking shit. But Jesus Christ, it looks like Picasso art compared to this. So the Doctor and Davros start talking about the cables, and we cut back to Missy and Clara again. Then we cut back to the Doctor and Davros again! Literally within 20 seconds of each other. Just stick to one or the other. This has become such a fucking chore to watch. So while the Doctor tries to be funny, keyword being tries, Davros very obviously tries to bait the Doctor into touching the cables. I wonder why. Davros then says that the Daleks are hardwired with the defect of respecting him and they show mercy to him? Ignoring how obviously bullshit that is, considering almost the majority of Davros' appearances. Like, yeah, I can't even play the full clip, but there's two factions of Daleks. One that obey the Supreme Dalek, and ones that obey Davros, which eventually leads to the Civil War in remembrance of the Daleks. Do you really think that if the Daleks had mercy for Davros, that this scene would even exist?
You will come with us? No! Until we can verify if you are correct. You will come with us or be exterminated here.
Or this, for a matter of fact.
You're not in charge of the Daleks, are you? They've got you locked away down here in the basement.
No. No, I've got the word. You're the Daleks' pet.
Hell, I've had to make quite a few comparisons to Journey's End, which is surprising because it's not even a good story. Series 4 easily has the worst written Russell T Davies finale. And when I say worst, I mean it's the only bad one. But even as shit as that story is, it still gets so much more right than this absolute garbled, gabbly garbage. One of the few things the story does right is continuing the Cult of Skaro story, and considering how much respect and mercy the Daleks have for Davros, what is quite possibly the most interesting part of Journey's End? Oh wait, what? This scene right here?
You betrayed the Daleks.
I saw the Daleks. What we have done brought time and space. I saw the truth of us, Creator, and I decreed no more.
Or even consider Davros' first ever appearance, which Moffat apparently very obviously missed the point of, despite it in fact being very simple. Very merciful of them, if I do say so myself. They're about as merciful as Walter White and Ozymandias.
I watched Jane die. I was there, and I watched her die. I could have saved her. But I didn't.
We will emerge and take our rightful place as the supreme power of the universe!
So the Doctor gets in a surprisingly good line about being the Doctor, as contradictory as it is.
There's no such thing as the Doctor. I'm the Doctor.
And these lines between the Doctor and Davros are like, actually good? And seem like they're leading into something? For the first time since this story began, over a fucking hour ago at this point, I'm actually invested in what's going to happen. I really hope this leads to something interesting. So we cut back to Missy and Clara again! And Missy is wiring Clara up to the inside of the Dalek casing. I know Clara's small, but it seems a bit stupid that this casing designed to fit these little greasy things in can fit a whole person in normally, without it needing to be hollowed out or anything. I know it's happened in the show before, but I honestly think it's always undermined them a little bit. So Clara once again refuses to challenge Missy on what she's doing, and she talks through the Dalek. And then very casually, almost as if it's a running theme with this episode, we get another show-destroying, villain ruining, treacherously horrendous line when Missy says, oh, God, this one hurts to even say out loud, emotions is what fires the Daleks' lasers.
What?
And phrases like, I love you, translate to exterminate.
What the fuck?
Moffat, do you please care to explain to me, what the fuck are you doing? What do you even mean? Daleks use their emotions to fire their weapons. Do you even know what a Dalek is supposed to be? You utter fucking imbecile!
It's a mutation. The Dalek race was genetically engineered. Every single emotion was removed except hate.
Does Moffat realize how much this destroys almost every single scene? Any scene with a Dalek killing someone? You've got hundreds to pick from, take your pick. Just imagine in those scenes, they aren't saying exterminate, they're actually saying, I love you. You are different from me. How utterly insane is that to think about? How do you even miss the point of the Daleks that much? It's not actually genetically mutated creatures with this strict idea of hatred and killing everything that isn't them because they have no emotions in their bodies besides hate. They're actually just telling you how much they love you. What? This entire story is so bad. Holy shit. Why on God's blue earth would you write it this way? And somehow Moffat is clearly forgetting that the Daleks were initially meant to be analogues for Nazis. Which, even as ridiculous as some of the stories they've been in are, is a sentiment that's always stood true, at least until Asylum. Like, yeah, you could believe, obviously pretending that Nazis had this technology, that if one of them survived World War II, if they found out one of the main antagonists from their point of view was alive, they would regain all of their power to try and take over the world, only to realise that without their leader, they're just pointless killing machines. You could believe that Nazis would be smart enough to have a secret smarter group that were built to adapt and survive and innovate to keep their race going in any way which seems necessary. You could believe that if given the necessary means, they would bring back all of the Nazis and try to take over the universe. Hell, you could even believe if one of them inexplicitly survived that they would try to upgrade themselves and able to rebuild the race. However, it's unbelievable that Nazis would have a planet in which they abandon old insane Nazis in order to basically get the equivalent of a British soldier to go down there and turn the shield off, and every aspect of this utterly deficient story is completely unbelievable for what's meant to be a Nazi race! Do you really believe that a Nazi race was screaming about loving someone as they murdered over 6 million people in World War II? You fucking moron! No. No more.
Ah, well, I'm inconsistent.
You can say that again, bucko! So we cut back to the Doctor and Davros again, where they continue their somewhat interesting conversation from before, where the Doctor proceeds to get touchy and pressed about Davros touching the confession dial, which would be interesting if this stupid shit actually led somewhere good in the series, but we all know it doesn't. So we cut back to Missy and Dalek Clara again, where we get this line which is just...
Why has the intruder not been exterminated?
Good question. Very good question. It's almost as if I asked that exact question before. I know this review has already gone on way longer than expected, and I'm basically deconstructing every line of dialogue, but good God! It's honestly hard to express in words how absolutely nothing makes sense in this story. Like seriously, almost every line is contradictory or just doesn't make sense in the slightest. It's getting to the point where I could have made this story a standalone big review on its own. Like, even just this little line here. Why wasn't Missy exterminated? And the explanation given to the other Dalek is that Missy is of huge significance because she's a time lady.
Time lady, thank you. Some of us can afford the upgrade.
But this then opens the question up immediately. The entire planet was clearly aware of what Davros's plan with the Doctor was.
The experiment has succeeded.
As they were clearly expecting him, since they would have been aware of the planet being invisible, They brought the TARDIS, they clearly already know about Clara and Missy being there, and given that the Daleks are stupid enough to alert the entire planet when the Doctor goes missing for 30 seconds, how do they not know who Missy is since she already has been seen by loads of them? If this Dalek does know who she is, why wouldn't she be immediately recognized and shot again? Also, assuming this Dalek knows who she is, which it really should, why doesn't the Dalek even question how she's alive? Why didn't the Dalek in the sewer scan her for 2 hearts immediately? Surely the Daleks just scan for shit like that immediately, considering, as much as this story likes to forget, Daleks are actually meant to be intelligent.
Impossible.
Doctor! Wait!
What's that?
Rewind image by 9 rels. This male registers as enemy.
Also, the Supreme Dalek knows who Missy is. Surely then every Dalek should know who she is as well. And if they did, the entire sewer scene and this scene make even less sense because she should be killed on sight. And all of that nonsense, that utterly garbled, gabbly, all over the place shit that I've just talked about was based off a scene which is literally less than a minute long. Less than 3/4 of a minute long. It was only 40 seconds. And I could base that much criticism off it. Are you starting to see the problem with this story? Well, I'd really fucking hope so, since I've spent so long explaining it, but you know what I mean. And also, I didn't even mention how the scene, once again, shows Clara's lack of initiative and not being able to think on her feet, given how slowly she responds to the Dalek. And isn't one of the main gripes with this series how they make her too smart and too perfect to the point where it's so insanely boring that you're actually happy when she gets her comeuppance in the end of it, until she doesn't? One of the main arcs for this series is meant to be Clara becoming so obsessed with the Doctor to the point where it leads to her downfall. Yet in this story, she's an absolutely useless, asinine idiot who can't think of the most basic answers to questions and seemingly is completely unaware of her surroundings at all times. This is out of character for the character Clara is meant to be in this series. It's out of character for Clara in Series 8. It's out of character for Clara in Series 7. And as a whole, it just makes absolutely no sense. This consistently inconsistent, insufferable bitch is somehow so boring and devoid of personality, yet so agitating and painful to watch that I honestly don't know how anyone can have time for her. She's just such a nothing, dull character, but also made out to be so important and so crucial that she's just a fucking annoying anomaly. So we cut back to the Doctor and Davros again, where they continue their surprisingly interesting conversation, where Davros actually congratulates the Doctor because he managed to save the Time Lords. Still doesn't explain shit like this.
Get out!
But this scene is actually leading to be good. And for the first time ever, I'm pretty sure Davros seems to be showing character development. Something that hasn't even really been alluded to in all of his past appearances, as good or bad as they were. And this opens up probably one of the most fascinating scenes in Moffat's entire era, where Davros starts to break down and actually have a heart-to-heart with the Doctor, questioning if he was right in trying to protect his own, and if he was a good man. Cringe callback to Series 8 aside, this is excellent. It shows how far both of these characters have come, how much they've been through, how much they've lost, and considering how much this story has really fumbled both characters to an absurd extent, this is utterly fantastic. Like, seriously, this scene comes completely out of nowhere. I really hope it leads into more interesting stuff. However, one huge gripe with this scene is Davros opening his eyes. As much more impactful as it makes the scene, if it was actually good. Davros still having eyes after all of this time makes him far less interesting, and takes away a lot of the mystique and scare factor that his character has always had. The idea of this man being so crazy and power hungry that he would gouge out his own eyes to replace it with Dalek technology to make himself more pure and more evil like his own creations was an insanely good idea, which made his design unique in the first place. The idea of this man that was half Khaled, half Dalek, because he wanted to make himself into more of one of his killing machines. It was brilliant. But that's completely undermined when it turns out he actually still has eyes. And his eye sockets are just like that because, I guess.
Each one grown from a cell of my own body.
Way to make an allegedly good scene far less interesting by ruining one of the most interesting aspects of his character. Why did I call this scene allegedly good? You'll soon see. So we cut back to Missy and Clara again, with completely tonal whiplash to the last one, that had a really good serious feeling tone for once, with Missy then proceeding to undermine that entire scene by undermining the Daleks yet again, by waltzing in and making fun of them. Yet again! Not just killing her on sight for no apparent reason.
Daleks do not take orders.
And it's at this point that Missy says she has Clara to offer the Daleks. And it's at this point that I question, what even is Missy's plan in this story so far? She's literally just been tagging along, spewing out cringy lines every here and there with no real substance, and now she wants to give the Daleks Clara so she can see the Doctor and Davros, but then what? Seriously, then what? Bear in mind, she thinks the TARDIS has been destroyed since it's not there anymore, and she doesn't know that the Doctor can do this bullshit. So what's the real escape plan here? Nothing, you say? Never explained, you say? Well, consider me considerably unshocked and unfazed, because that's all this story has been so far. So we cut back to the Doctor and Davros again, and the Doctor, finally, after 30 fucking minutes, asks how Skaro came back. And you know what the answer is? They remade it. Yeah, that's it. How did they remake it? Where did they get the material from to rebuild the buildings? How did they rebuild the buildings, considering they don't have arms? Did they get slaves to do it? Did they take over another planet? Is it even in the same galaxy? Is it in orbit with other planets? Does it have a moon? If the planet was built from scratch? Wait, why am I even asking if they have a moon if they built the planet from scratch? You can't build a planet from scratch! I honestly don't even know why I even bother picking apart writing like this if it clearly wasn't thought through in the first place. Well, truthfully, it's because I want this show to be better. Because I know it can be better than what it is most of the time. Even Moffat, for all of his faults, can write a good story if he tries. But that's the problem. He doesn't try. He clearly didn't care enough throughout most of his era, which is why he almost never explained anything, or put it off for so long that by the time you get to the conclusion, that conclusion is unsatisfactory. You don't even fucking care anymore, and you just want it to be over, so you'll move on to something else. And then he fucking does it again. So the Doctor and Davros continue their interesting conversation while the Doctor tries to save Davros, but it isn't enough. Davros has just been gone too long. And as they talk about being on the same side for once, all of the snide remarks and direct comments all leads to fruition. You know what I was talking about. You know how I was talking about how the scene between Davros and the Doctor was actually really good, which was surprising considering this episode's quality? Well, if you leave the scene in a bubble, then everything I said about it is true. However, the real reveal of the scene is that it just doesn't matter. You know why? Davros was just lying the entire time. He just wanted the Doctor's regeneration energy to save himself and upgrade all the Daleks to make them more powerful. So all of that meaningful development Davros was getting for, at this point, being a character for 40 years, it didn't matter, because it was just bullshit. And it's at this point, even though this is only the start of this chonker Series 9 review, that I give up. I don't even want to shout about how this is stupid, because this is just... it's just depressing how all of the potentially interesting stuff just goes to waste for a cheap twist. Just so Moffat could shock the audience, but this isn't shocking. We already knew this was going to happen. Not only because it was inherently obvious from the get-go, but the story basically told us what was going to happen anyway.
Tonight, we entrap the Time Lord.
And all I've got to say about this, really, is why? And also, fuck you! You complete and utter moron! Why in the ever-living shitbrain fuck would you build the entire story about the relationship between the Doctor and Davros, be that they're actually gonna finish this, finally hash things out, and end the rivalry, and then just throw it all away anyway? What is wrong with you? Do you know what substance is? Clearly not, you utter bitch!
Why do I like
Stephen Moffat
so much? Probably because I'm quite thick.
So we cut back to Missy and Clara again, and all of the Daleks who still haven't killed Missy for some reason shut off and start regenerating. And Missy starts showing actual concern for the Doctor. Strange considering the Series 8 finale, but at this point I've just accepted that these two aren't the same character. So Davros babbles on about the hybrid, which you'll just have to wait until later to hear about, to just find out why that's all bullshit. And Missy explodes the machine that the Doctor was hooked up to, and he falls down, only to be completely fine within seconds. Plot armor at its finest, once again. No consequences, no change, no threat, no danger. It is an actual fucking war to get invested in this story. So the Daleks are now part Time Lord, which, if you think about it, makes no sense that they would celebrate this, because the Daleks want nothing but to be pure Dalek, and all the ones that haven't been have been insane or hated themselves.
Isn't that better?
Not for a Dalek.
This is not life. This is sickness. Give me orders. Order me to die. Obey! 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 I shall not be like you.
That makes him half human.
Those words are blasphemy! I am the god of all Daleks!
They're insane. Driven mad by your own flesh. You hate your own existence.
You know how the whole point of the Cult of Skaro was to adapt and overcome and survive, but Sek was the only one at the time smart enough to realize that the purity is what led them to extinction?
But we must remain pure. No, Dalek they. Our purity has brought us to extinction.
And when he tries to innovate, he was turned on, only for Dalek Khan to realize he was right and wipe out all the Daleks. And even the rest of the Daleks in the Series 4 finale, they hated Dalek Khan and reluctantly left him alive.
The abomination is insane.
You remember that brilliant story leading around ultimately showing that the Daleks are a paradox? They need to evolve to survive, yet are unwilling to because of their inherently Nazi ideologies? Nah. Daleks are fine with changing their DNA. Every single one of them.
The hybrid is not half Dalek. Nothing is half Dalek. The Daleks would never allow that.
Both episodes written by the same person, by the way. As if the Daleks would even need the fucking upgrade anyway. These things, a long time ago now, are the most efficient killing machines in the universe. And the only person who ever stops them is the Doctor. Why didn't Davros just trick the Doctor here, get regeneration energy, and then just fucking kill the Doctor? It's not hard. And you know what makes this stupid shit even worse? It turns out that the one scene that had potential to be interesting in this episode, that was already ruined by Davros lying the whole time, was doubly ruined, because the Doctor was also lying the whole time as well. He knew all of this was going to happen and let it happen just so we could have another reveal of the Doctor being smart, blah blah blah. Fuck you! Use the Doctor is smart as a resolution so many times and it loses all of its impact, the more bullshit you cobble around it. What do I mean by this? Well, so if the Doctor knew that this was a trap and what Davros was planning, then why didn't he just touch the cables the first time Davros tried to bait him into it? If all he wanted to do was upgrade the Daleks in the sewers so that they would overflow and kill and or nullify all of the Daleks. Oh, yeah, that's the outcome of this, by the way. Because Davros was connected to every Dalek on Skaro, that includes the dying ones that were in the sewers. Quick question. If you were ancient and dying, then why the hell would you connect your own life support to already decaying, dying Daleks? To put it simply, are you dumb? And also, if the angry, vengeful Daleks are coming up through the sewers and are trying to kill the others, why don't they just, I don't know, fly upwards to avoid them getting into the casing? Same applies to the sewer scene before, but it applies here even more so now. Like, fucking hell, it's not as if these things hadn't been able to fly in the show for 17 years at this point. So they leave Davros and hopefully we never see this exhausted, tired out, used and abused character ever again. He didn't go out with a bang, as much as a flop and a whimper. So the Doctor meets Clara in the Dalek, obviously not knowing she's in there, and Missy, because she has no character motivation, tries to get the Doctor to kill her, manipulating him into trying to shoot her. While this is something very in character for the Master to do, given that Missy could have done her entire non-existent plan without Clara, it just makes you wonder why she's even bothering now. Like, I still don't even get why she went out of her way to save her from the Dalek laser fire in the first place. Not that we ever saw how that was set up, because this story's fucking awful, but you know what I mean. And it also begs the question as to why Missy even brought Clara along in the past to the first place. But this story's awful. So, what? But even then, in this scene, Missy's manipulation is so obvious. I don't know how the Doctor is stupid enough to fall for it. And the scene also doesn't work because the translation from the Dalek thing, while inherently not making sense in the first place because Daleks don't fire with emotion, when the Doctor asks if Clara is alive, she says, "No, I'm not dead, I'm in here, can you hear me?" And for some reason that just translates to the Armor saying, "I am a Dalek, I am alive." Is there honestly a single logical explanation for anything that happens in this episode? So Clara and her slug eyebrows open the casing because she made it say mercy, and Clara gets over this extremely traumatic event 30 seconds after it happens, because she just isn't a character.
It wasn't me who ran, Doctor. That was always you.
Example 4776 of a style over substance line that actually has no relevance to the scene itself. So the Daleks don't try to shoot the Doctor or Clara immediately again, and even ask for his help. Because why not further ruin the Daleks even more than they've already been decimated by this story? Daleks, known for their asking for help and making alliances.
You propose an alliance? Request denied.
So the Doctor waffles on and reveals that the TARDIS wasn't actually destroyed, it just redisputed itself. Because of course it can do that. And he can just sonic it back to normal. Because of course the sonic screwdriver, sunglasses can do that. Cringe, by the way. So Missy's cornered by Daleks and then says she has a clever idea. And we never find out what that idea is, and we don't see her for the rest of the series. Because of course she can inexplicitly survive this. And the Daleks don't shoot her immediately on sight. Again. Because of course they don't. So the Doctor then goes back to the beginning of this awful story and saves Child Davros. Because of course he does! Honestly, it's still ridiculous that the Magician's Apprentice expected us to believe that the Doctor would shoot a child. Ever! And that also just reminded me of another tension killer for this whole story, is that we knew the Doctor was going to survive regardless, because we already knew he was going to end up back here. So those scenes with Davros have even less impact than they already did. Oh my god. For fuck's sake! So, that was The Witcher's Familiar, and oh my good golly gracious me, where do I even begin with that one? I think given how destroyed my voice has been for the latter half of this review, really speaks volumes. I'm only still recording this now because I'm actually really enjoying making this video, because it's been so long. That being said, this might single-handedly be one of the single most disastrously catastrophic stories Doctor Who has ever made. Like, the story itself makes no sense. Every single detail you can pick apart and explain why it doesn't make sense. Seriously, in this over 90-minute feature-length story, all that happens is Clara and Missy find the Doctor dicking around in the past because of this series arc bullshit. Then they get taken to Skaro, and what essentially boils down to filler for the rest of it leads to Davros tricking the Doctor into giving the Daleks regeneration, only for that to kill them all, or at least a lot of them, because they forget that they can fucking fly. Wait, how do they even get in the casing if the casing isn't damaged? Whatever. Literally, I just thought of another issue with this story, and that's while I'm just fucking recording it. There's that much wrong with this story. And this story just brings up so many goddamn stupid questions, just like the first part. Like, why is the Doctor so out of character? Again! Why is Missy even here? What is her character motivation? Why does she just do whatever she feels like until the episode ends? Why is Clara such a blank moron throughout the entire thing? This entire story could have played out practically the same without her. Honestly, the best outcome probably would have been if we just cut out Missy and Clara from this story, and it's just the Doctor getting tricked onto Skaro for Davros' final day. Davros dies after his actual development scene, and the Doctor manages to leave traumatized and upset, and the story ends with him saving child Davros and hugging Clara. How much more impactful would that have been over this fucking garbage that we actually got? And you could have done all of that in a single episode instead of dragging it out for 90 minutes. Which, in doing so, you've somehow managed to cram this episode with so many fucking plot holes and issues that this is single-handedly the worst series opener of all time. And the competition isn't even close. Seriously, even all of the Whittaker era ones, they don't hold a candle to this. For the longest time, I thought Asylum of the Daleks was worse than this. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, it's been a good few years since I've endured the suffering that is Series 7. But I am fully confidently going to say that this is, without a shadow of a doubt, the worst Dalek story of all time! And I haven't even talked about the Daleks yet. Returning to the questions, why don't the Daleks kill anyone? Why are they so useless? Why are they so slow? Why are they so dumb? Why don't they question anything? Why are they such a non-threat? How do you even make them such a non-threat? Lasers, useless mate. Not that they shoot at anyone who's vulnerable anyway. Why is Davros such a moron throughout this story? Why does he connect his own life support to dying Daleks? Why does he have no concept of what his own creations are? Why are his attempts at manipulation so bad? Why does he not once try to utilize the Sonic to a useful degree? Oh, and I've just thought, the Doctor never got that back, so assuming Davros isn't dead, but given that he's clearly fucking immortal, if he ever appears again, he still has the Sonic Screwdriver. Just one to think about. And another question, why the fuck did Moffat write this story? Fuck me. Fuck you. Enjoy the rest of this review. Boy, what a horrible way to start this absolute disaster of a series. And would you believe me if I told you, this isn't even the worst that it gets? Oh no. I might have talked about this episode and deconstructed it to the point where I've basically tore it apart line by line. But yet, there is still another story in this series which is even worse. I wouldn't believe it either if I hadn't already reviewed it more than 2 years ago. Which episode is that, you're wondering? Well, you'll just have to stick around and find out. Oh, and in case you forgot, the rest of these reviews you're going to watch are written from the point of view of me when I was 17, LeMayo, thinking that this was a good series of Doctor Who, which I was more than wrong about, more than you could possibly believe. So prepare yourself for a lot of, this is good setup for X, because it leads into Y later. But then just prepare for me even further to explain on later why that doesn't actually matter. Also prepare for a little while for my audio quality to get worse for the next couple hours until I actually got my microphone. All of that aside, this is one of the worst Doctor Who stories ever written. An embarrassment on every conceivable level. But up next is Before the Flood. An actually good story. Fucking spat all over my microphone.